Welcome to episode 129 of Trek Live. In this week's episode, we're going to be putting our writer's caps on and doing some kind of imaginary episode pitches. But before we jump into that, how you doing this morning, Bill?
Doing good. Looking forward to doing this. Something different. Getting our creative juices flowing. More than just kind of talking about existing Star Trek. So should be different. Should be a different spin on what we normally do, and I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah.
Cool.
Pretty much it.
Yeah. Before we jump into it and kind of talk about the topic at hand, how's your rewatch going? First of all.
The formal review an episode each as I go on Twitter rewatch is slow going, but I did rewatch on that rewatch where I'm reviewing episodes as I go. I'm on TNG season 3. I think the next episode I'm on is Hollow Pursuits. But outside of that, I've rewatched the first season of Picard to prepare for what we did yesterday on Course Heading, which was the Trekkie Awards for the first season of Picard. So I'll prop that up as a way of saying I rewatched Picard to do that. Yeah. I watched all the whole first season over the course of a couple of days, and I've also kind of subtly, without really talking about every episode as I go, been watching TOS for I don't really know why I got the urge. It is. It's like my quiet behind the scenes little project. I kind of was feeling watching it without necessarily having the pressure of having to tweet a review for every episode, just to just kind of casually, not mindlessly, but just kind of, passively watch it in a way that I really haven't in quite a few years. Typically, for the last 5 years, as I've watched Star Trek, I've been tweeting as I go. I'm doing that on the side too, but I am looking forward to getting back into the more formal project with reviewing episodes and MVPs and with Hollow Pursuits, hopefully. Maybe today.
Yeah.
What about you? Where are you?
I believe I've watched 3 episodes in the first season of Deep Space Nine since we've talked. The last episode that I mentioned was The Passenger, so I've watched Move Along Home, The Negus, and Vortex. So,
okay.
I think at least these few are, at least for me, are really middle of the road episodes. I think a common thread I see here is with Odo. There's a lot of mystery behind where he's from. I think there's some, especially in this, first half of the first season. There's some reoccurring, things about that. Move Along Home wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. There are some cringeworthy moments, but I think it gets a bad rap. I definitely middle of the road episode. Very forgettable episode. I would just be completely honest, but it's not as bad as people think. I would cite other episodes as the worst episode as episodes of Trek, probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you seen worse episodes so far, in your opinion? Are there episodes?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this might be the worst
of this run so
far. But I think there's some early TNG stuff that I might quote as worst episodes.
Worse?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's fair. That's definitely fair. Yeah. Yeah, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on.
And maybe we do a
But I think we're gonna do a more formal conversation about season 1 as a whole, and we've talked about some of the early episodes a few weeks ago. But I want to save some of the conversation for episodes like the Negus and even Vortex for maybe that episode. But I am eager to talk about your thoughts on really all the episodes. But the Negus in particular is an interesting one for me. It establishes a lot of things to come and sort of a little sub-mini series within the series with the Ferengi. But we'll get there. You're more than halfway through. It's a short season.
Yeah.
Just 20 episodes or 19 episodes or something, if you count, depending on how you count Emissary, one or two. But you're beyond the 50% mark. So within a few weeks, I think we'll be covering season 1 of DS9 as a more whole conversation, and talking about thumbs up, thumbs down episodes in your opinion, and where you stand on your kind of first time in a long time experience with DS9 season 1.
Exactly. Yep, I'm excited to do some in-depth coverage because, it has been a while, and I think it'd make for some fun conversation. Speaking of fun conversation, I think we should just jump into the topic at hand.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yep. So
real quick, I think this is something that we're hoping we can kind of double back to, just kind of talk about like the idea as a whole.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe we should start out with like what prompted us to do this and like what our intention is. You kind of hatched the idea, so maybe you introduce it. Talk a little bit about how you came up with it, and maybe how we can modify it moving forward to weave it into our kind of ensemble of recurring topics.
So, Bill and I were out of topics. I feel like the 11th hour, we thought of this kind of idea and kind of hatched it. So, I feel like every fan, whether it's you have your own podcast or you're just a casual fan, but everyone has, dreamt of being in the writer's room or in the, be a fly on the wall and in developing these shows that we've always loved. But also like giving back and adding to this beloved fandom that we all are obsessed with. So that's where it kind of stemmed from. The thing that I love maybe most about this topic is this style of topic is we can change the parameters a little bit. We can, right now this week, we're going to be doing TNG, but I think the flexibility of this topic is going to allow us to do, hey, we're going to do, let's say, TOS Season 3, where your budget is very constrictive. You only have a certain amount of sets you can use, a certain amount of actors you can use, because we have to pay for extras and costumes and all this stuff. So there's parameters we can do. We can, you make, this could be a parameter, like you have to tie it into a future event or, something, keep the continuity alive. But I think that this topic just lends itself to such, a fun little discussion that we can have with not just Bill and I, but we're planning on having more people like adding to the writer's room and maybe doing a season. So there's this topic has such a big flexibility that I think it's gonna make for some fun discussion.
Yeah, I think like you said, you could add whatever parameters you kind of want. You could go to any show, you could go to any point in each show, and kind of be compelled to come up with an idea that fits within the framework of that season. That has to take advantage of the continuity that is established to that point. Like you have to. Right now, like what we're going to do today is just kind of TNG generally. We can kind of do whatever we want. We're going to do it pretty loosely.
Yeah.
So very few parameters other than the fact that it's a TNG story.
Yes.
We're pitching or trying to come up with. So, but if I mean, it's a very different thing if we get really specific and say, we're in TNG season 1, and you have to operate within the framework of what the show was at that time, and the tone of the show, what kind of stories the show was aiming to tell at that point. That's a different thing than TNG season 6 or Enterprise season 2. Like we could get specific, we could get loose, we could get very restrictive. Like you said, TOS season 3 is very different than Enterprise, like I said, season 1 or 2, where the budget's much bigger and they're less limited with what they can do from a production standpoint. So I'm really looking forward to like stretching this out and, like you said, maybe bringing other people on, expanding the period of time, or having more people in the room to kind of flesh these ideas out. So what we're doing is like a pitch. We're going to pitch an idea and bring to the table like what the value we see in it is, and how we kind of envision the story playing out, what we hope it accomplishes, I guess. And then through like what everything we've heard about the way that a TV writers room kind of works is you hear a pitch or you throw ideas at the wall, and the room kind of talks about it and fleshes it out and feels it out to see if it works, and if you can get through, building it collectively as a team. Somebody goes off and writes a script or an outline and then a script. So we're trying to kind of mimic the idea of fleshing out the idea and seeing how it works. And if you inject a few more people into the room that want to be creative too, that can bring about other ideas too, and could make for some interesting conversations about story ideas that people might have. And I think, like you said, Dan, a lot of people do. I speaking for myself as somebody who's lived with Star Trek for such a long time, and has read like trivia books and kind of goes on Memory Alpha and reads the little factoids about the episodes and stuff. Like, there's a lot of that kind of information, but the stuff that I really wish I knew, and the things that I really kind of imagined myself like really loving the most is like you said, being a fly on the room and in the writer's room, like hearing how these ideas get hatched and the different directions the stories could have gone and where the ideas come from. What was Brown and Braga or Ron Moore or Gene Kuhn inspired by when they came up with this episode? Like, where's the idea come from, and how did they get from here to there? So trying to mimic that experience a little bit and fleshing it out and getting some firsthand experience with just kind of playing with it in our own little sandbox here is exciting. So,
but I want us to think about this as logically and as realistically as possible, at least for right now. Like, there's going to be some times where, like, all right, you're the showrunner, you have the budget is unlimited, but this is going to be more of as realistic as possible. You've got Rick Berman or Gene Roddenberry breathing down your neck to just maybe make this happen, and you got the other writers. So Bill and I are going to become interns. We're going to be in the writers' room. We're working through this. Should be make for fun conversation.
Agreed. Yeah, look forward to it.
Yeah. Who wants to go first, or am I? Do you want me to pitch the idea? Who?
Yeah, I mean, you go first.
Okay. Are we both? We're both doing one, right?
We're both doing one.
Okay.
We both have one.
Okay.
That's what we're gonna try it this way first, and I think because maybe we're not as specific with the parameters this week, I think we're gonna try it with more broad ideas that can kind of fit wherever we want them to in TNG, and we each have one.
Yeah. So also, take this with a grain of salt. This is not a final product. I really want to be as positive as possible. It's definitely tough thinking of an episode and trying to be as original as possible. So if this sounds like an episode, just say, this sounds a lot like such and such. This is how we can kind of turn it around to maybe make it a little bit different. Because there are some similar episodes, obviously, in Trek. There's over 700 hours of content out there, so there's going to be some overlap, obviously. So just try to be as positive as possible.
Sure. And you better believe that those kinds of things happened all the time in these writers, especially back in the 90s, where they had multiple shows going and they were into the 600th or 700th episode that they had produced. So yeah, you better believe that there were ideas that may have hatched as something similar to something that was already done on some other show. But that's why you have a room. That's why you talk about it. Maybe you can adjust something or another to make it a little bit more different and have it work on its own. So yeah, you can't be afraid of maybe stumbling into something that an episode of Enterprise that you forgot did something similar. We can work with that.
So my episode fits well in maybe in October or maybe a Friday the 13th type of. It's kind of a thriller type of episode.
Okay.
It's a working title. Maybe Blackout, maybe The Cemetery. We could go a lot of different ways, but I would just get into kind of the story a little bit, maybe.
Sure.
So Picard is with Crusher in the turbolift where he plays his flute, where the harmonics are perfect. They're playing, where he's playing. This is going to be later TNG. This is just um, so let's see here. Geordi, Riker, and Data are on the bridge. Troy and Worf are engineering, giving a tour of the engine room to first graders.
Okay. All right.
Or just the, I guess not first graders, but just the school, I guess.
The school. Yeah. Okay.
So they come into a region of space similar to night, no stars.
Okay.
They're heading in pretty fast. There is a fog-like entity that surrounds the ship.
Okay.
The ship comes to a complete halt, lurches everyone forward. The ship goes blackout.
Mm-hmm.
So there is panic. Obviously, no lights, no nothing. This kind of jump all over the place, but Data and Riker. We stay with Data and Riker and Geordi on the bridge. They restore comms through residual power through the comm badge, but they don't know for how long with a comm badge and a tricorder, so they're able to get to the captain, because although the captain is off duty, he always has his comm badge. So he is able to communicate with the bridge. Let's see here. So just using their tricorder, they have limited scans of the ship, but we're losing life support. The Enterprise is dead in the water. She's pretty much cold. There are some emergency backup power, but we've only got enough for a couple things. Sensors, life support, a few other things. So what the captain decides is to cut the power to the environmental only for the essential areas, because so like the turbo lift where he's in, and other surrounding areas only have a few hours of air left. Well, why don't they just go to essential area? Well, Crusher broke her something. She's injured. She can't move.
Injured. Okay.
So she, advises the captain we probably shouldn't move, just because we would expend more oxygen, and maybe just give a chance of lasting longer, but just trying to stay calm. So let's see here. So that gives the bridge crew enough power to power up the sensors and the view screen. And then they're able to shoot a flare. So they shoot a flare because it's dark. They have the view screen up. And there's this. I just see the shot, right? There's the fog that surrounded the ship, but then the flare that comes out. The anomaly kind of slowly goes to the flare, but there's this cool like graveyard scene where it's just the shadows of a bunch of other ships just floating adrift, but with no fog around them. The fog is centering on the flare. So they discover that the anomaly is attracted to heat, and which drains the ship's energy. It's like a magnetic fog, kind of. That's what I kind of. There's some techno babble that we could insert there, but.
No TNG episode is.
Yeah.
A little techno babble.
So the team hatches a plan. So when they do the sensors, immediately the bridge loses all power. They're dead in the water now too. So now they all just have communications comms for a little bit. But the thing about this is not the whole crew has comm badges, so they don't really know what's going on. Let's see here. Okay, so the team hatches a plan. uh, to turn with the sensors they get data. Obviously, they kind of find out more about this fog type of thing in the region of space they're in. So the plan is for Riker and Data to go to the impulse engines, but they have to reroute power from engineering to the impulse engines to get one last shot. But they have to make the ship as cold as possible, so the fog kind of dissipates, because if they fire up the engines right away, the power just get sucked away, and then they'll move a little bit, obviously, but the power will just get drained really fast because they're surrounded by the fog. So, sure. But it's up to the first graders and Worf and Troy to transfer the power manually, because we lost power to the bridge. So it's kind of like those big breakers. They got to do a couple of those. I think it would be a fun thing to kind of put Worf and Troy with some difficult first graders. And
safe to assume that maybe Worf is there because Alexander's there.
Yes, and
okay.
Because the only reason Troy and Riker are doing the transfer is because we couldn't pay for extras, obviously, but also in the lurch, some of the engineers got hurt and they can't do it, so they got to transfer the power manually. But it's up to Riker and Data to move through the ship, navigating rooms that don't have oxygen and stuff. I guess Data could just keep walking through them, but and maybe that's what happens. Riker has to be left behind because Data has to walk through, because he doesn't necessarily need oxygen to get to the impulse engines.
Right.
Auxiliary control room or something. We can make up some more techno babble. Now, so we'll get everything transferred, make everything as cold as possible. Luckily, the auxiliary control room, where all the power is being rerouted to, is more towards the center of the ship. I could be completely wrong. I have to look at the blueprints, but so the fog dissipates. Now it's very important because the ship is very cold right now, and people are losing oxygen. We're getting down to the wire, right? So I think a cool B plot or C plot that we could do with Picard and Beverly is they use an old form of communication, because the ship is so cold and so quiet. They could do Morse code and just tap to the rest of the crew to let them know that what's going on and everything's going to be okay and everything. So they get to the engine room just fine. They do a blast of impulse engines and get away from this dark wreckage.
Entity. Thank you.
Yeah. So that's the episode.
Cool. Yeah, I mean it's definitely got a lot of classic TNG sort of elements. You got spatial anomaly causing havoc. A lot of echoes of.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
I wanted to split the crew up because I think when I think of TNG, there's always like an ordinary thing happening. Maybe they're doing an exercise class with Worf or something like that. So it's the in the turbo lift with Picard playing his flute, and then something happens. They get thrown into the episode. So and then split up the crew, I think is fun, and then putting Worf in an uncomfortable position and having the whole crew work together to get out of something.
Yeah, a lot of echoes of Disaster, which is an episode that they get split up in similar ways. You have different combinations, which is good. Different tasks to perform, to get out of there. And I like when TNG does that. I like when TNG pairs the characters in like different, combinations and uses the entire cast. TNG certainly gets into the rhythm of kind of doing. I always kind of think of it like, I don't know if you ever watched Lost, but Lost will very structurally have like, okay, this is a this character episode, this is a that character episode, and TNG was very similar in a lot of the, especially in the later seasons. Like, this is a Worf episode, this is a Crusher episode, and I always really liked when they had episodes that really utilized the entire cast and made them work together and build on the ensemble as a whole. But yeah, I mean, it feels like a TNG episode to me.
Cool.
I think there's a lot to work with there, and it feels at home in the 7th season. Figuring it's kind of late in the game. I think in the 6th, 7th season, when Braga is a big influence, there's a heavy leaning into the big science fiction ideas, the anomaly kinds of problems, and horror thriller kind of elements, dark spooky kinds of episodes. So this is a comfort zone that TNG, I think, finds itself going to not all the time, but often enough to make your idea feel at home in the show. And I think there are some fresh pairings and a different kind of anomaly that I think give it some fresh elements. Yeah,
and I think there's some opportunity for some romance as well with Troy or Worf, and
Crusher and
Picard. So
yeah, and ironically, that's kind of where I went. I didn't go anywhere near as detailed as you did. To be honest, I did not go with like a beat by beat kind of play. Mine's more of a concept with an idea of what I wanted to accomplish, like what I want, where I want it to go, and what I hope the point of the episode is. I don't have like the details worked out nearly as well as you do. So we had different approaches on that.
That's okay. That's
which is interesting.
That's fine. That's
yeah.
I think the best. There's some little bit of advice to people if people are trying to write an episode or think of an idea. I think it's just to get it down and just to do it, because you can just. I mean, there's no limit to how many episodes you can do, and I think getting one down, leads to another and another and another. So I think that's one thing that I found in this kind of process.
Yeah. Cool. So, should I start with mine?
Jump into it, yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
Jump into it. Okay. So, mine kind of comes from a couple of different places. I stumbled into a movie that I didn't watch in its entirety, but I'd seen it before, just kind of flipping channels a couple of weeks ago. It's called The Constant Gardener. And it does something that I always found kind of interesting. It's about I don't want to go into detail with the movie, but basically what it does is it's a guy whose wife had died, and through having to delve into the wife's past and like piece together a mystery through looking into the wife after she's gone, falls in love with her again, basically, like falls in love with his wife even more deeply than he was when she was here. So I think what I'm trying to do here is find a way to kind of retroactively, which probably would break the rule that we would come up with later on if we're fitting exactly into canon somewhere. But I'm thinking of an episode that would work after Attached with Picard and Crusher.
Okay. That
would kind of explain the reticence to do something with Picard and Crusher. They never go anywhere with it after that, and I would like to find a way to give credence to not going there with Picard and Crusher. So my idea would have something to do with, some mystery, some the specifics is what I don't have. For some reason, Crusher and Picard have to unlock something from Jack Crusher's past. So it's a way to kind of delve into the Jack Crusher backstory
Hmm.
Um, through the holodeck. They have to go to the holodeck. They have to start. They have to create a simulation of Jack Crusher, and go through a process to find some piece of information that would unlock the mystery of the episode. Um, and through that process, Crusher and Picard both kind of re-up their relationships with Jack Crusher, which makes them realize that, you know, going to this territory that they're kind of edging toward is maybe not the most comfortable thing to do. If Crusher finds a way to, if Crusher ends up kind of falling in love with Jack Crusher in death, and Picard even kind of falls in love with Jack Crusher as a friend, that would kind of blow them back and make them realize, hey, this is not the way to go. I like that idea. Now, again, I don't have. I think the specifics of the week, like, you know, what's the mystery? What's the reason to go into Jack Crusher? Like, well, what's pulling us to Jack Crusher? Is it something that, you know, Picard and Jack Crusher served together in some capacity in the past, kind of vaguely explored, vaguely explained? Is there something that, you know, Picard's aware of that Jack Crusher dealt with, and now they're you know, having to deal with the same alien species and you know, resolve some conflict, and in order to get the information, they need to kind of, you know, do what Star Trek sometimes does and takes like a crewman or a dead person and creates them on the holodeck so that you can have a conversation with them, and to get the information in a more natural way than maybe sitting in front of a pad and just like scrolling through logs and piecing it together. Like, if there's a way to create something that you can converse with and for the purpose of TV drama, you know, get the information without just having somebody sit behind a computer and read it. I think it would accomplish a couple of things. I think it would. Rob's in the room. We watched Star Trek Insurrection last night, and one of the big topics while we were watching that movie kind of also inspired this a little bit. With Dr. Crusher has nothing to do very often, especially in the movies, and even maybe too often in the Next Generation. So I'm always eager to, you know,
give her something to do.
Drawn to the characters that maybe have a lot of potential but don't yet, like, have enough going on there. So I'm intrigued by giving that character more meat to play with, not only in the here and now, like with the relationship with Picard and where she is in life now, but in her back history with Jack Crusher. It also does things for Picard with Jack Crusher, and I think it also kind of fits. Season 7 of TNG has this theme that they always kind of reckon back to with the crew's family history and their ties to their
that's
past,
true.
and reintroducing, you know, Geordi's parents and interface, and the woman that Noonien Soong was romantically tied with, and inheritance, like basically Dave's mother for all intents and purposes. You know,
Yeah, there's big family vibes from late season.
Big family vibes.
Yeah.
Worf's brother in Homeward. Yeah. Even Crusher's grandmother in Sub Wrestle. Like, they're constantly, like, they clearly made an effort to, like, lean into the family histories in season 7. So I think it would be a neat way to kind of expand on the ideas thrown out there and attached, and be in line with what they were trying to do in the 7th season, and wrapping up the characters and setting them up for, you know, where we're going in the future with the movies. And given they were clearly uncomfortable with going the romantic route with Picard and Crusher, I think, you know, rather than just leaving it there as, you know, we're just not going to go there, you know, do something with it. Do have a reason not to go there. Make the characters choose not to go there. Either, you know, and then, you know, a conversation that I would be interested in having if we were going to, like, hatch this episode really out, like, is that a conversation that they outwardly have with each other after an experience like this, after they both interact with the hologram of Jack Crusher? Like, hey, we can't go here, or do they both just know it? And, you know, can you play it in a way that the audience knows that that's where they are, and it tells us everything we need to know without them having to acknowledge it to each other in an outward way. So I guess the approach I took was more of like a more vague pitch that doesn't have the nitty grittiness of the plot necessarily fleshed out, but more of a
No, it's a great pitch though. I like this episode a lot. I think it's hard to support obviously because I want to see the almost the opposite, but I think it does, like you said,
I do too.
it fits really well into the seventh season. I'm trying to think of specifics though. You know, maybe we do. This is just I don't if you don't mind me taking
please.
it creatively,
Absolutely.
but
please do.
I would love to see like a maybe whatever they ship they served on, if it was the Stargazer or whatever. There's some anniversary
Right.
where Picard has to give a speech. Maybe he gives a speech about tying it to Crusher or but I think the speech to me would be fun to do a thing where it seems like he's speaking, but he's really just speaking to Crusher, Beverly Crusher. I think it would be fun.
Definitely,
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we do a Crusher family reunion. Like I don't know. It's a
Yeah,
great
I
pitch
mean-
though. It feels right at home in season 7.
Cool. Thanks. Yeah, I think that the mechanics of how you get to where I want to go are flexible in all the Star Trek ways. Like there are different directions you could go to create the situation that calls for, whether it's initially just Beverly to have to interact with a Jack Crusher hologram uncomfortably at first and having to get comfortable with the idea, or Crusher and Picard both having to do it. Is it some sort of you could go any number of ways. It could be a booby trap kind of situation where they have to default to something like that, create a simulation to bounce ideas off of and talk to, or it could be a holodeck malfunction kind of story where they're on the holodeck doing this or that and they're stuck in there and now they have to work their way out, and for whatever mechanical reason you can kind of come up with. There are different directions you can go in, and I like the idea of tying it to Picard's history serving with Jack Crusher somehow, whether it's on the Stargazer, or he mentions in Picard he's on the bridge of the Reliant as an ensign. It doesn't go back that far. I don't think so. I think he was a little older when Jack Crusher was super close with him. But wherever in history you want to kind of put it, some sort of crew reunion or some sort of anniversary that draws people together and creates a situation. I think I'm open to. That's where, to me, like the idea would really need to be fleshed out, like to create the situation that's most satisfying and most credible in terms of what puts them in the situation to need to interact with a version of Jack Crusher.
Or we
but-
do. Yeah. Go ahead.
I always think about, like, in some of the documentaries that you see behind the scenes stuff with the writers talking about writing Star Trek. Michael Piller would notoriously apparently always ask during pitches and during these kinds of conversations, what's the episode about? Like what's the episode trying to accomplish? Like what's at the end of the day, what's the episode doing? I tried to maybe
To run
start
with that.
from that.
Yeah.
Like what am I trying to accomplish here? What's the idea? And the idea is effectively for Beverly Crusher to re-fall in love with Jack Crusher in death, basically, and to kind of set her path forward with that in mind. Whatever decision she makes on how to move in life it is informed by how she feels about her dead husband. And I think the 7th season is ripe for all the reasons we talked about, with having the theme kind of being going back to family stuff, but having lived with Beverly Crusher for 7 years and having knowing that that's her history and she has a deceased husband who has a tie to the captain. I mean, having enough build up to pay off something with that relationship, I think the 7th season's maybe the time to do it. As the show's kind of getting ready to wind down.
Yeah. Maybe we
Rob,
do it. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Rob says, random idea, maybe the reason for having to delve into Jack Beverly Picard's past. Could be some sort of flashback-esque reason. Picard and Bev have some sort of suppressed memory that is causing them a medical condition they have to resolve. Yes, something like that. Like flashbacks a good example of an episode that forces a look into the past. The Star Trek has definitely come up with plenty of ways to do that kind of thing, and there's no shortage of that. That's where I feel like the writers' room comes in handy. Like having that's something that 5 or 6 people in a room could hash out. Like, okay, how do we get there?
Yeah.
What's the step-by-step mechanics of that's fresh and different, and fits the episode tonally, to get us into the situation that we want to get into to tell the story we want to tell.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say?
I don't know. It was just another idea. It's fine.
Please, I want to hear. I want to hear.
Plenty. We've had plenty of ideas about it, but yeah. Anything else? I think it just kind of working through this a little bit, because this is kind of a work in progress. This is a topic idea. I think maybe
this is our yeah.
It would be fun to maybe make this like a couple parts, at least maybe in the future. Let's say we take just an example. We take Bill's pitch, and then we do another couple episodes of Trek Live, working through it and kind of, hatching out, and maybe writing a few lines of dialogue and getting a script together. I think it would be really fun, because I think, like you said, I think part of this process, it needs to be worked and fleshed out and workshopped.
It does.
I think, it can't be done in 45 minutes. Although it was really fun, and I think, but just doing this, I now know that the writer's room, what kind of work went into it, because this obviously, the episodes, Rome wasn't built in a day. Episodes weren't written in a day. Well, I mean, maybe sometimes, but
sometimes they are. Yeah, that's the thing. Sometimes, it can come in different forms.
Mm-hmm. But I think I would want to have a process.
Yeah, I think that's totally that would be great. That'd be cool. Mm-hmm. But I think the way we both approach this kind of illustrates the two different ways you could do this. I mean, you kind of really worked the episode, and had you kind of built an outline. You did the like if they did that, you would get a story by credit, because you kind of built the beginning, middle, and end of a story.
Yeah.
And from there, you were gonna a team would flesh it out further and write a script that fulfilled the outline that you kind of created. For me, it's more of like I'm sitting in a room with 3 people and I say, here's my basic idea.
Yeah.
So and both are completely valid. I mean, if I spent more time, fleshing what I came up with out, I certainly, I think I could have done what you did, and come up with more specific beats that would kind of pull the episode forward. But I think both approaches are equally valid to do. I think if I think both ways are cool and interesting. Rob says absolutely. You can see how you would need to throw and bounce ideas off other people, like they did in the DS9 documentary for.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. That's definitely the closest we've ever come to being in the room, obviously, and seeing how that process works. And that's I didn't realize, I don't think until I saw that, how collaborative it really is. That the writer's room really is like a big room where people sit and they like talk through an episode. I think years ago I had the idea in my head that it was basically, maybe you sat in somebody's office for a few minutes, like kind of Dan and I are doing virtually right now, and bandied about an idea, and then I went off into a room and wrote a script, and you went off into the room and wrote your own script. It all kind of just happened with people sitting in offices pounding away at a keyboard. And that's not really the way it ultimately plays out from everything I've seen and learned. It's more collaborative than that. The writer's room works together, and ultimately at the end of the day, somebody's going to need to go into a room and write a script, and somebody will get credited for that script. But it's even when you see on the screen written by Ronald D. Moore for a given episode, it's more collaborative than
it's
that.
not
Ronald
just
Moore
a single
wrote the
name.
script.
Yeah.
It's not, but he did not necessarily sit there and come up with beat by beat every single thing that happened, every word of dialogue, every development, every character interaction. Like there were things that the entire room probably contributed in that episode, which is an important piece of information, I think, to have in your head watching these shows. I think it's good context to have, and doing this definitely puts that into motion. You can kind of see that it's not that easy to just come up with something yourself. Like there are things to hash out, and you need other creative people to do that. And just doing it here one time, I think it further illustrated that's how it goes.
Yep.
Rob says, really great to hear ideas for episode ideas. He did flesh out an episode 2-3 parter for Voyager once. So that gives everybody's. I think a lot of people save it, Rob. Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people have. I think a lot of people, if you're a long-term Star Trek fan, if you spend a lot of time thinking about Star Trek, it's just natural to because of the nature of the show, especially the old stuff, the 90s stuff. It's so easy to. Because it's so episodic and it can go in so many different directions. It's so easy to put yourself in the role of a writer and say, what kind of episode would I want to do? What would I write? It's an easy leap to make. I think a lot of fans have toyed with this kind of idea and maybe put pen to paper, maybe done it formally, maybe not, maybe just rattle around in their head and never really do anything with it. And I'm more in that camp. I can't say that I've ever put pen to paper and gotten that creative with it. So it was cool to put my hat on and really think it through. And the other thing I was trying to do, and I'm realizing how difficult it is, just one of the things, like I've told you, Dan, one of my kind of side projects that I spend a lot of time doing is I watch the Criterion Collection, which is a movie, a lot of international and classic movies. And some Star Trek episodes are kind of hatched from old movies. A Matter of Perspective is a retelling of Rashomon, an old Akira Kurosawa movie about an event being seen through different eyes, different perspectives. And I kind of went back and was looking at all these movies that I've watched and trying to even get them to fit into a Star Trek episode. It's not that easy. It doesn't just these old movies don't just snap at a finger adapt into a Star Trek episode, because Star Trek's so specific, these movies are so specific. So even that, I thought maybe there's a movie that I can twist into an adaptation in a way that Balance of Terror is a retelling of Run Silent, Run Deep, an old submarine movie. There's a lot of beats from that movie into that episode, but that's easier said than done. Even that, you have to find the right movie and find the right mechanics to get it into a Star Trek episode and to make it be its own thing too, and not just a retelling of an old movie. The whole exercise was kind of gratifying and challenging, and made me appreciate the writer's room even more than I already did.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It really made me appreciate just the difficulty of putting one episode together. I think would be just a whole 26, 27 episode season. It's just on another level. But it also made me look at a show a little bit differently. How do I get the tropes and from that show into my episode, and how to make it feel similar, how to make it feel similar enough that someone in the writer's room would be like, let's go with that. How can we it's
simpatico with the show. Yeah,
it fits. So it was definitely fun. It gave a new wrinkle to just the creative process, but also appreciating the show and the writer's room. So I think it was a very fun topic.
Yeah, and like you said, I think we'll come back to it. There's so many different ways you can do it. You could flesh out an idea like yours or mine today. You could take an idea that either one of us hatched in a conversation like this and kind of run with it even further. Or like we said at the beginning, we went very generic TNG, kind of go wherever you want in TNG. But if you put parameters on it, it's got to be, it's got to be season 2 Voyager, so it's got to involve Kes, It's like no Borg, none of that stuff. It's Kazon and Vidians. If you want to go to like recurring, uh,
Aliens.
adversaries,
Yeah.
it's you can't use the Hirogen. You can't do all that other stuff. Doctor has no mobile emitter.
Yeah.
Like
He's
you can
confined.
put the, yep. You can pinpoint where you are. You're an intern in the writers' room in 1996, and they look at you in the middle of season 2 because they're out of ideas. Like, what do you got, intern? Like, better pitch something if you want that passing grade.
Yeah.
And the point in the Star Trek timeline that you're in, definitely creates a whole new set of circumstances that would dictate the kind of idea that you come up with and the way, the approach that you would take. So there are so many different ways you could revisit this and inject more people into the conversation, have other people in the room, and see what ideas other people come up with, talk about those ideas, and see where they go. Yeah, Rob's idea, just in short, because we might want to save it for another conversation, it revolved around a Delta Quadrant, the Void-esque alliance against a deadly new enemy. I mean, that's cool. That's
really cool.
Fits right at home. Whole, feels like Voyager story, and I'm sure you have more detail and more specifics that you've worked out, and that's where the fun lies, diving into it and fleshing it out, and being collaborative about it.
All right, I think we'll wrap it up here. Star Trek content, go check out Core Setting. Bill and I had a great time discussing Trekkie Awards. They were handed out yesterday, so definitely go check that out. We'll be back next week, talk about more Star Trek content. The discussion does not have to stop here. I'd love to hear you guys' script ideas. Twitter, Discord, obviously we'll probably post on Discord, see if we can get some live some discussion there today. Also Twitter, love to hear them. So we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks everybody.